Good morning. I'd like to welcome you to the remote meeting of the Central Durham Joint Crematorium Committee, taking place on Thursday, the 1st of October 2020. The meeting will be recorded and streamed on the Council's website and will be available to view for a minimum of 6 months. Please be aware that any footage from the meeting can be used in subsequent media broadcasts. I would like to give a warm welcome to the members, officers, and any members of the public or media who are watching the live feed meeting. Before I commence the formal business on the agenda, I would like to cover some housekeeping issues for us all to follow. All participants must mute their microphone. To speak, use the chat phone on the right-hand side, type RTS, request to speak. Remember, everyone in the meeting can see the message in the chat function. When invited to speak, remember to unmute your microphone. Once invited to speak, please introduce yourself with your name and position, unless of course you've already introduced yourself earlier in the meeting. If you're having any issues with conductivity, try to switch off your video and just use the telephone function. If conductivity issues continue, you may well have to leave the meeting and rejoin to get a better signal. If in the course of the meeting my signal is lost, I will hand over to the Vice Chair, Councillor Chaplow, and they will take you through the rest of the meeting until my connection is restored. With those few comments, can I welcome you all again to the meeting, and can we move on to the first item on the agenda, which is apologies.
Thanks, Chair. Michael Turnbull, Democratic Services. Chair, we've had apologies from Durham County Councillors, Councillor Amanda Hopgood, Councillor Heather Little and Councillor Arnie Simpson. We've also had apologies from Spennymoor Town Councillors, Councillor McAloon and Councillor Sproat.
Thank you. Can we move on to substitute members?
Thanks, Chair. We've got one substitute member from Durham County Council, that's Councillor Richard Ormerod for Councillor Hopgood. And from Spennymoor Town Council, we have Councillor Harry substituting for Councillor McAloon and Councillor Ranyard substituting for Councillor Sproat.
Thank you, Michael. Can I make a particular welcome to those members who are attending the meeting for the first time? I do hope you'll enjoy the process. Can I take us on to item 3, which is the minutes of the meeting of the 29th of January? Before I invite other comments, I'd like to draw attention to item 8, which is on page 9 of the minutes. You may remember that we agreed a fee increase at that time, and obviously with the pandemic coming in and working with other organisations, it was felt to be wrong to introduce that increase at the time we would have done. But you will notice the item is again discussed further down the agenda, so I hope that was all right with people taking that decision. I now invite anybody to speak. Councillor Richard Ormerod.
Thank you, Chairman. Just on the minutes, on page 7, item 5(2). Obviously, I'm a substitute member, so I wasn't there, so I don't know what the decision was, but it says that the current situation with regards to the relief crematorium attendance position. Now, as I say, I don't know what the decision was, but I think we need a verb of some sort there.
Graham, could you help us with that one?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's Graham Harrison, Bereavement Services Manager and Registrar. Yes, we did have some relief crematorium attendance positions available. We've had some interviews and we've actually got them employed now, so we can amend the minutes to make that known now.
Is that okay with you, Councillor Ormerod?
Well, yes, but what are the minutes actually going to say?
I think they're going to mention the fact we've now filled those positions.
Yeah, but that what was the decision is what I'm asking.
The decision was to fill those positions when they became vacant, which is what we normally do, and that's obviously we've gone through the process, which is to invite members of staff from either of the two councils to apply for those positions, and that's what I believe we've done. Yeah. Okay, can I invite Catherine Herrings, and then I'll bring in Paul Darby. Catherine?
Thank you, Councillor Foster. Yes, I'm just referring to the apologies for absence on the minutes. It has Councillor McAloon listed as a Durham County Councillor when in fact he's a Town Councillor.
Okay, I'm sure we can get that corrected.
Thank you.
Can I bring in Paul Darby?
Yes, thank you, Chair. It's Paul Darby, the Head of Finance and Transactional Services for the County Council and Treasurer for the committee. It was just to pick up the comments from Councillor Ormerod in the report that Bereavement Services Manager brought to the committee in January. It was noted that there were some vacancies in terms of those sort of relief crematory attendants, and as is the standard procedure with the committee, was just alerting to the committee to the fact that they were going to be advertised, and they were going to be advertised internally to shore up the provision within the crematorium. So I guess the recommendations that were made in that report at the time were just noting the fact that there were vacancies and I was going to be undertaking a recruitment exercise. And in terms of matters arising, Graham's just sort of confirmed there that that advertisement did take place, and he has got some relief crematory attendance on the books now, which has proved handy for as we've been through the pandemic process.
Thank you, Paul. Councillor Ormerod, I'll bring you back in.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, so is the decision that we need to add the words "be noted" at the end of that sentence?
Yes, everybody seems to be happy with that. Thank you very much for pointing that out. Are there any other comments on the minutes? If not, thank you very much. We'll move on to item 4, which are declarations of interest. If there are no declarations of interest, I'll move on to item 5, the external audit. Paul?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Paul Darby, Head of Finance again. Chair, it's a very short report, just to note that since we've last met, obviously we've been through the year end for the financial year end of the 31st of March 2020. The finance team completed the Joint Committee's annual return. We submitted that to Mazars, who are external auditors, and they've concluded their audit of the annual return, which is attached to this report. And it's a report for members' information to say the audit's been complete, that the auditors have signed off the annual return, have not highlighted any sort of material weaknesses around our system of internal control, and have effectively approved the annual return. The annual return's attached, including the external auditor's certificate for that. So the recommendation is just to approve the annual return, which has been signed by all the relevant parties and subject to external audit.
Okay, I've got a request to speak from Catherine Herons. Catherine? I'm sorry, you're on mute.
Yeah, sorry, just trying to unmute. On behalf of Spennymoor Town Council, I'd like to thank the Durham County Council officers for the efforts they've put into the return and say congratulations on it being completely unqualified. That's brilliant.
Thank you. I'm sure we all echo those sentiments.
Thank you.
If there are no other questions, can I formally move the recommendation? Can I have a mover? Okay, everybody seems to be happy. Okay, we'll move on to item 6 on the agenda, which is the performance operation report. Graham, I think you're going to take us through this one. Page 21.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Graham Harrison, Bereavement Service Manager again. So the report's to provide members with an update on the performance and operational matters at the crematorium. The table is for the period the 1st of January 2020 to the 31st of August 2020. And the profile can be seen in Appendix 2. In summary, there was 545 came from Durham, 76 from Spennymoor, and 1,370 from other areas. There was 3 non-viable fetus for this period compared to 10 in the period last year. There was 445 more cremations undertaken during this period compared to the same period last year. Obviously, this was due to the COVID pandemic, with experiencing more cremations in April, May and June. The next item, Chair, is with regards to the sale of memorials. We sold 134, which was £43,826, compared to 128, which was £46,833 in the same period last year. This was an increase of 6 memorials and a decrease of £3,007 in income. The next item is with regards to operational matters. First item is staffing. Members agreed at the January 2020 meeting to advertise for a full-time technical assistance post. There were 4 applicants shortlisted, and following interviews on the 23rd of July, the current admin apprentice was successful and commenced a new role on the 3rd of August 2020. As members will be aware, the COVID-19 pandemic placed the crematorium under immense pressure, increasing the death rate. To accommodate the additional workload, extra staff were brought in from other DCC council services to cope with the demand. Existing staff had to carry out their normal duties whilst also training other staff in the roles. All that ensured that we had a bank of trained staff, and we had to operate a shift system and be able to operate 7 days a week. The shift system was in place for 2 months, with staff working 10 hours a day, 4 days on and 4 days off, which also included myself and the staff having to work bank holidays to cope with the demand. The seating within the chapel had to be removed and replaced with 15 individual seats. This allowed us to sanitise between each service to ensure a safe distance of 2 metres could be maintained at all time. The staff continue to cope with the demands, are an asset to the crematorium, and I would like to personally thank them for their assistance during the difficult time. The next item is with regards to recycling the metal scheme. We had extra funds in the 2019 scheme, and therefore we agreed to nominate the Friends of Durham Woodland Cemetery. However, due to COVID-19, we were unable to present the cheque for £10,000, and therefore I arranged to present the cheque personally myself. A letter of thanks from the trustees is attached to Appendix 4. The next item is with regards to Heritage Open Weekend. We've been doing this for several years. However, due to the pandemic, we decided not to take part in it this year. Next item is the cremation fees. Members agreed at January 2020 meeting to increase the fees from the 1st of April 2020 from £700 to £720. However, as the chair has alluded to, during the COVID-19 pandemic, a decision was taken to freeze these prices. This was taken in line with other authorities who've done the same thing. During the period 1st of April to 31st of August, there were 1,333 cremations, where the 20 price increase was not applied, equating to 26,660 in reduced revenue. Discussions with neighbouring authorities have found that whilst they had either frozen their prices or offered a discount, all is now reverted back to the planned 2021 cremation fee. In light of this, we've come up with 2 options. Option 1, continue to freeze the cremation price at £700, or option 2, implement the previous agreed budget cremation price of £720 from the 1st of November 2020. And the recommendation to that is to go with option 2 and charge the budget £720 cremation from the 1st of November 2020. Next item, Chair, with regards to webcasts. Again, members agreed at January 2020 to increase the webcast charges from the 1st of April from £36 to £48. However, again, due to COVID, that was provided free of charge because of the reduced numbers of only 15 members being able to attend. Each webcast currently costs £30, and they're currently being made available for all services. During the period of 1st of April to 31st of August, there were 516 webcasts requested and provided. That was a cost of £15,480 and lost revenue of £24,768, assuming all 516 webcasts were charged at £48. Discussion with neighbouring authorities again found they provided it free of charge. However, they have now all started recharging the full prices again. We have 2 options available again. Option 1, continue to provide the webcast free of charge. Option 2, recommence the webcast free fee of £48 from the 1st of November 2020. and the recommended option is option 2, Chair, to recommence the budget at £48 from the 1st of November 2020. Next item is with regards to Service Asset Management Plan. The last one was presented on the 27th of September 2019, and we've updated that again, and that can be seen in Appendix 3. The Service Asset Management Plan split into 4 elements. Priority 1, essential works for 2021, and these have been estimated at 277,057. Priority 2 for 2022-23 has been estimated at £5,000. Priority 3 in the next 2 years at £24,000, and longer term works costed to the sum of £484,000. So, Chair, the recommendations are to note the current performance of the crematorium, note the updated position with regards to technical assistant post, note the updated position with regards to recycling the metal scheme, note the options available for the cremation fee and approve option 2, note the options available for the provision of webcasts and approve option 2, and note and agree the contents of the Service Asset Management Plan. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Graham. I've had a request to speak from Councillor Jan Blakey. Jan?
Yeah, thanks, Neil. I'd just like to say a personal thanks to all the staff who pulled out all the stops while we've been going through what we've been going through, and those staff who were redeployed into areas what they've never dealt with before. I think they all did absolutely fantastic. So thank you from me.
Thank you, Councillor Blakey. And can I, and I'm sure the rest of the committee, associate ourselves with those comments? I think the hard work that's been done by all of the staff has been much appreciated, and the only comments that I've had in the general public have been very positive ones. If there are no more questions, are people happy to move the recommendations as outlined? My apologies, Councillor Ronyard. I'd like to bring you in now.
Thank you, Councillor Foster. It's Councillor Dean Ranyard, Spennymoor Town Council. I'd like to echo the comments that Councillor Blakey's made there in regards to thanking the staff who were moved across to work at the crematorium during a busy period. They've obviously done a great job in making everything run smoothly. Can I just ask a question regarding some of the works that have been programmed in? Just regarding the two-way passing at the entrance to the crematorium, I note that in the previous minutes it said that that work was due to be completed in March 2020, but that work now seems to have been moved forward into the next year. So I'm just wondering if that can be explained as to the reasons why that's happened. Thank you, Chair.
Graham?
Yep, thank you, Chair. The reason it was put off was because of the current COVID situation, and we felt it was unreasonable to actually have that work undertaken, and therefore we've put it back.
So it's still the intention to go ahead with that work?
It is, yes.
At a more appropriate time?
Yes.
Councillor Ranyard, is that okay?
That's perfectly fine. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you very much. We've had the list of recommendations in front of you in the report. Are you happy to move them all en bloc? I see no dissent.
Yes, yeah.
Thank you. Can we move on to the next item on the agenda, which is item 7, the monitoring report. Paul?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Me again, Paul Darby, Head of Finance. Members on the committee will be more than familiar with the format of this report, and it follows on from Graham's operational report, gives an update on both the revenue and capital budgets for 2021, and gives the members an indication of what the revenue capital outturn is forecast to be for the current year, and what that means in terms of the retained reserves and balances of the committee. In terms of the key headlines in the report, and you'll see it's a very detailed report that gives members a very detailed explanation of under and overspending against the budget that we set back in January, and what has changed since then, and the reason for that. What you'll see is the sort of bottom line is that when you factor in the additional cremations that have been and are expected to be undertaken this year through the facility, that compared to the budget, and factoring in all of the under and overspends on expenditure. From a revenue perspective, we expect to sort of overachieve the budgeted surplus by around about £275,000. Members will recall when we set the budget, we were already budgeting to make contributions to the reserves. So in overall terms, the outturn for the revenue side is indicating that we'll be increasing the earmark reserves of the committee by just under £336,000 at the end of the year. There is a sort of, I'll draw members' attention to the table on page 76 of the papers, and that just shows where the under and overspends are being achieved. You'll see that we're forecasting to overachieve income by around about sort of £363,000 and overspend some of the expenditure side by around about £87,000. The two areas of overspend on the revenue budget are driven as a result of the increased sort of demand that we've faced, particularly during April, May and June, where we've sort of obviously been running shift systems, been making premium payments and had to bring in incur extra employee costs. And we expect that to be about £30,000 over the budget. And the premises costs reflect the fact that we've had to replace we've had to make some investments in terms of the crematory repairs, with sort of a heat exchanger being needed to be replaced in year, which was an unbudgeted item. Overall terms, sort of in terms of the crematorium as a business, you'll see that obviously the pandemic has resulted in additional income and significantly overachieving the original revenue budget. In terms of the capital programme, on page 78 running on to 79, you'll see under paragraph 14 of the report, just an update on sort of how we expect the capital outturn to look this year. Members will recall when we set the budget back in January, we anticipated 3 items of capital expenditure this year: some replacement of the chapel dome, some relining of some of the cremators, and enlargement of one of the cremators. You'll see that we then at the end of the year, there was some capital programme investment last year where this expenditure wasn't incurred, that we rolled them over into the current year. So the revised budget was £194,000. We expect to spend about £100,000 rather than £194,000, and you'll see in the paragraphs that follow that table an explanation for why some of those works, of which the enlargement of the entrance and some of the road works, have been deferred into next year, as has the relining of 2 of the cremators, which are the 2 significant items that are being reprofiled. I'll give the members assurance that those works are still in the plan and still are planned to be done. It's just for a range of operational and strategic reasons they're sort of being deferred into next financial year rather than proceeding this financial year. I'm happy to take any comments that or questions that members might have on the report. Appreciate it's quite a long and detailed report, and hopefully it gives a very detailed explanation of the current and forecast position for the crematorium, which remains to be a sound and healthy financial position. Chair.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you for that comprehensive report. I'll invite any members that want to raise any comments or questions. But I see it does read as a very positive report, and even in these unfortunate circumstances, we are putting the future, we are planning for the future, and we know what we're going to do and how we're going to develop and take that forward. And as always, I think being prepared, even for these unusual circumstances, has paid dividends in the long run. I have, can I invite Councillor Jopling to speak?
Thank you, Chair. Really, it's just something for as far as performance goes. The delay of the relining of the 2 cremators, does that make any difference to the performance? I know that sounds ridiculous, but I just wonder, whether it does make any difference to those throughput. I know that sounds horrible, but
Graham, can I hand that over to your technical knowledge?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. No, it makes no difference at all. The cremators are okay at the moment. We've just had them serviced, so they're fine. So it's not worth spending the money at this point. We'll relay it to next year.
Chair, just for Councillor Joplin, obviously there are life cycles to these things, and sort of the relining was sort of, in terms of the manufacturer, they would normally expect it to be required to be relined in this financial year. Clearly, what we do is we plan for that in terms of the service asset management plan. We made provision for it, but as part of the annual sort of inspection and maintenance, they then checked whether that is actually needed or can wait another year rather than sort of replace something or reline something when it isn't absolutely necessary. But so we do it not when it's in danger of sort of failure, but when it's about ready to be relined, rather than do it sort of routinely in line with the original manufacturer's recommendation.
So it won't cause bigger problems later on? No. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I invite Councillor Ranyard?
Thank you, Councillor Foster. Yeah, I notice in the service asset management plan there is a section in there about water reclamation. I'm just wondering about if that's been forecast in for the future, if their costs have been looked at, and when realistically that could be brought in.
Thank you for the question. We had a report at the committee some time ago, sort of highlighting that this was a method of sort of dealing with cremations that was sort of that is in place in America, North America, I understand, but isn't currently licensed. And there were some trials that were happening, and it was something that we were potentially going to look at, and Graham was going to bring a report back to the committee at a later date for sort of say what is the financial and environmental business case for looking at that. But I think there are issues around the environmental sort of permits and regulations around that, so it isn't something that we could implement at this stage. But Graham's sort of doing a review of that. We put in the service asset management plan just to note that, well, actually the cremators are due for replacement in terms of their life cycle in 2032, so the last 20 years. But there was a potential about whether, for environmental reasons, we could look to sort of trial that in advance of that, or sort of when we come to replace them, use a different system. So there's no imperative for us to do it. It was something that we were minded to have a look at, and Graham's got that on his forward plan. All things being equal, if it wasn't for everything, he might well have been sort of working on some of that business plan now, but we will bring something back to the committee in due course. There's nothing pressing in terms of timescales around it, but it is something where we're keeping an eye on in terms of the market.
Graham, is there anything you want to add on that? I think it was Yorkshire Water we were waiting for, wasn't it?
It was, yes. It's really just gone quiet at the moment due to COVID, but we will try and start it up again next year.
Councillor Ranyard, sorry, Councillor Bell, was that an indication to speak? I can assume not. Councillor Ranyard.
Sorry.
Okay, I've got no other indications to speak. Councillor Ranyard, are you happy with that answer?
Yes, Councillor Foster, thank you to the officers there for the background explanation to that one. Thank you.
Okay, if there are no other members wishing to speak, can I move the recommendations? Are we all happy with those?
Yes, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. And now we'll move on to the item 8, which is the risk register.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Sorry, a relatively brief report, but an important one in terms of the governance of the facility and through this committee. Members will be aware that we review, or the internal audit team sort of challenge and review the risk register with Graham and his team on a continual basis, but we bring a report through to the committee on a 6-monthly basis, and this is the 6-monthly review, and it's for members sort of assurance that the risk register is being maintained and is being kept up to date. It has been subject to a review process, and there are no new risks that are worthy of including on the risk register at this stage, but to give members assurance that there's been some additional sort of assessment of the managing excess death risks and some of the mitigation that's been put in, particularly around the shift working system and increased resilience in terms of relief cremator attendance, has been factored into that managing excess death risk. the risk register remains as was reported last time. It's attached in Appendix 4. The only real changes are some of the additional mitigating factors that just has increased the resilience for the facility around managing excess deaths. So the register is there for members' information and for their assurance that it is being looked at and is being kept up to date, Chair.
Okay, thank you again, Paul, for that report. Are there any questions on that? If not, if we move on to the Internal Audit Charter. Paul, is that you again?
No, that's me, Chair.
My apologies.
No, thank you. So my name is Stephen Carter. I'm the Interim Chief Internal Auditor and Corporate Fraud Manager for Durham County Council, and we carry out the audit plan of internal audit work for the Joint Committee. So the purpose of this report is to seek agreement on the revised Internal Audit Charter to take immediate effect and to be applied to the reviews to be undertaken as part of our plan of work for 2021. So the Charter defines the service's purpose, authority and responsibility. So it basically sets out how internal audit operates, what managers and members of the committee can expect from us, and what we require from officers in turn in order to be effective. So the Charter, reflecting the changes made to the public sector and internal audit standards in 2017, was previously considered by the committee at its meeting of the 27th of September of last year. It is subject to annual review by myself, and on this occasion with no new revisions made to the standards other than needing to reflect the name changes for the appointment of myself as the Interim Chief Internal Audit and Corporate Fraud Manager and the Corporate Director of Neighbourhoods and Climate Change, it is considered that no further amendments to the Charter are required at this time. It is therefore recommended that in considering the content of the report, the Joint Committee approve the Charter attached at Appendix 2.
Thank you, Stephen. My apologies for missing you earlier on. Can I invite any members that have got any questions on this? If not, are we happy to move the recommendations? There seems to be general agreement on that.
Yes, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Dumpton. That takes us on to item 10 on the agenda, the annual review of the internal audit system. Who's taking the lead on that one?
Yeah, well, I can do that if you want, Chair. What I've presented to members here is just an overview of the annual review of the system of internal audit. It's a corporate governance requirement that this committee sort of seeks assurance that the opinion that you take from the internal audit service, that they're operating within all of the necessary public sector internal audit standards, that they are competent and they are operating to all the necessary standards, so you can place reliance on their opinion. There is a process that sits behind this that requires the internal audit team to undertake a self-assessment on an annual basis, for that self-assessment to be considered by and scrutinised by the County Council's Audit Committee, and for that assessment to be subject once every 5 years to some external verification and review. This report, Chair, just outlines that the Internal Audit Service, of which we've got a service level agreement with, and Stephen and his team undertake the internal audit reviews on behalf of the committee, that have been subject to the review by the council's audit committee, and there's a summary of the requirements and how they meet that requirements in the paper. The report for assurance for the committees that process has been undertaken by the council's audit committee. We don't then need to undertake it ourselves, because members of this committee can take assurance from the fact that that process has happened, that the audit committee has undertaken that, and there's a summary of the outcomes in this report. So it's for information for the committee and for them to be to take comfort in the fact that work's being done by the County Council's Audit Committee, and that the assessment was that the internal audit scene demonstrates all of the efficiency and effectiveness that you would require and of them, and you can place reliance on their opinion, Chair.
Thank you, Paul. Appreciate it. Any comments or questions on that? If not, are we happy to receive the report? Thank you, members, much appreciated. This takes us on to item 11 on the agenda, which is the budget strategy report.
Yes, thank you, Chair. The last report from me, you'll be pleased to hear. I'm seeking the members' views on a number of matters to help us frame the budget preparation for 21-22. And what the paper includes is goes through some of the key areas of the budgets and some of the key underlying assumptions that that can then inform how we pull the budget together for 21-22 and what the medium-term financial plan outlook is for the committee. So if members could bear with me a second, I'll sort of step through the report and some of the key issues that we need to take into account and some of the key assumptions that I'm seeking members' views on. So, Chair, sort of paragraph 14, I just sort of recap the what is the significant capital investment we've made at the crematorium since local government review. The major item being the replacement of the cremators and the extension to accommodate that. Paragraph 15 just outlines that summarises the figures that are included in the service asset management plan, for members' information that actually there will still be a requirement to invest in the facility over the next 3 or 4 years, and therefore we need to take that into account in terms of the annual budget setting. For the cremators themselves, as I alluded to earlier, the 3 cremators were installed in 2012. They have an estimated economic life of 20 years. So if that were the case, then we would be seeking to replace the cremators in 2032. So clearly outside of the sort of the medium-term financial planning period, but these things are expensive. And if we look at the procurement that's underway to replace the cremators at Mountset, to replace the cremators, assuming the building and the technology is as it is now, would cost around about £1.6 million. So to fund that, we would need in 2032 the ability to finance a replacement of around about sort of £1.6 to £2 million. And you'll see from the financial report that the position of the crematorium is healthy enough to accommodate that. So that's just for information. You'll recall that when we replaced the cremators back in 2012, we funded that through a combination of use of reserves that the committee had available to it, and then a potential borrowing loan that the county council took out on behalf of the committee. And we built into the budget subsequently that repayments of that loan over a 10-year period on a 10-year annuity. So the current budget includes just under £214,000 worth of capital charges, loan repayments, and 2021 is the last year of those. So when we go into next year's budget, we've got provision for £214,000 worth of payments that will not be required. And I'll come on to some of the suggestions in terms of how we handle that. But it's just that's a major issue that is to a benefit to the committee next year. Paragraph 20 just gives a summary of the information I've just gone through in terms of the financial monitoring report, but just shows what the reserves and balances of the committee are forecast to be at the end of this financial year. And you'll see from that table there that we're forecasting that the reserves and balances of the committee will be just over £2.1 million at the end of this year, of which £1.4 million is already earmarked and there for major capital works. And major capital works are essentially the replacement of the cremators. So with another 10 years to go before we need to replace them, we're already substantially there towards having that provision in the reserve to be able to fund that replacement. Clearly, another sort of significant item in terms of the budget is our assumptions on fees and charges, both the level of fees and charges and our overall assumption in terms of the numbers of cremations that the facility will deliver. I just show for members' information there the fact that the cremation fee for Durham, even with the reinstatement of the budgeted increase in the current year, remain the lowest of all of our sort of regional competitors or other facilities in the area, and significantly below our direct competitor at Coundon. And what we assume in terms of budgeted numbers, we budget for a prudent level of around about 2,200, and you'll see the table of paragraph 24 there just gives you an indication of the levels of cremations that have been undertaken in recent years in what you would class as sort of normal years. So 2015-16 through to 19-20. Clearly, you'll have seen from the financial report and from Graham's operational report, the numbers this year are significantly in excess of that because of excess deaths. But we've been prudently budgeting at 2,200 and generally coming in above that, anywhere between sort of 50 and 100, 150 above that. And what that means is that we effectively overachieve the budget consistently over the last 5 years. There's a little table there at paragraph 25 to the papers, which just looks at a bit of a sort of a matrix of if we made different assumptions in terms of the number of cremations in the budget and different assumptions in terms of fee increases in each year on a sliding scale, how much additional income would that generate for the facility? So you'll see if the budgeted level is 2,200 and next year there is a increase of £10, that would be an additional £22,000 over the current budget that would be generated next year, and so on. And you'll see there's a bit of a sliding scale there. In making our assumptions next year on the number of cremations, clearly, we need to take into account the fact that there is a new facility being constructed at Castle Eden, and that may undoubtedly impact on the crematorium. So it may well be that funeral directors in that area, sort of from an efficiency point of view, seek to sort of use the Castle Eden facility rather than the Durham facility, or it may be that the Castle Eden facility sort of pulls business from Hartlepool and sort of and other areas. Clearly that's unknown at this stage. So what we need to just take that in mind. If we were minded to take a bigger risk in terms of budgeting for a higher level of cremations, we need to sort of factor in that actually that overachievement we're currently experiencing may not necessarily continue to be the case, and worst case scenario, our underlying budget assumptions of 2,200 might need to be revised downwards, depending on how the Castle Eden facility pans out. Having said that, and members who were on the committee for many years when the Coundon facility opened, we'll see that we face the same issue at that stage. So it's just sort of there in the background that we need to sort of bear that in mind. The other thing to recall is the Mountset Crematorium scheduled to replace their 2 new cremators in the coming months. They're proposing a £20 increase to the fee in next financial year. And there is a sort of a long-standing arrangement since local government review, when we harmonised the charges between Mountset and Durham, that's something we would need to take into account. From a Durham County Council perspective, being the lead partner in both facilities, it would seem sort of inequitable if we had 2 different levels of cremation charges at Mountset and Durham for 2 facilities that the County Council has a sort of a significant interest in its area, charging different fees. So that's sort of something to bear in mind also. Okay, so in terms of sort of forecasting, then what we built into the forecast that then following the rest of this report is that we'd assume that that Durham Crematorium would reciprocate the arrangements with Mountset, who were sort of assuming a £20 increase next year, but that we would remain at 2,200, and that's what we factored into the figures that are later on in the paper. I mean, even with that £20 increase, we are significantly below the current average, £144 below Coundon's facility in the current year, notwithstanding whatever increase they would apply in 21-22. So, if members would have the assurance that we would still be the lowest fee charger, both within the county and in comparison with other neighbouring facilities. In terms of surplus distribution, members will be aware that surpluses that are distributed to the constituent partner authorities are shared on an 80-20 basis. The current distribution is £637,000, just above, and obviously with the removal of the financing charges, there is some scope to look again at that for 21-22, and indeed I believe in the medium-term financial planning for both Durham County Council and Spennymoor Town Council, speaking to colleagues at the Town Council, there is an assumption that they would be receiving a higher distributable surplus. From this committee's perspective, the fact that we've got the loan charges dropping out provides you with the facility to do that without risk, I guess. So the proposal is that we would be in January bringing forward budgets that would assume an increase in the distributable surpluses in line with paragraph 33 to the papers. Taking all of that into account, and building in the SAMP costs, building in prudent assumptions around cremation numbers, cremation charges, normal inflation, etc. across the budgets, I just set out at paragraph 35 there a bit of a medium-term financial forecast for what the crematorium budgets might be across the period 21-22, 22-23, 23-24, and as members will see, even accounting for all of those investments and those budget pressures and taking those sort of risks into account, we still expect the reserves and balances of the facility to increase across that period as well. It's a strong position to be in and a good position to be in as a committee, and from a prudence point of view, and from sort of my sort of section 151 officer hat on, I think it's a strong position to be in, and sort of just be interested to receive any comments or questions or queries that members might have, but it hopefully gives the members a good feel for where the budgets are looking in terms of next year, and some of the key proposals that we'll be bringing to members in January. Hopefully it's a useful report, Chair.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you for that report. I've had several requests to speak. I'm going to bring in Councillor Blakey first, followed by Councillor Ormerod, and then Councillor Chopling. Councillor Blakey.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. There's two questions really I was thinking about. Where are we on with the emergency electrics, the standby electrics, after the major fault we had? And the other one is, and it's probably more Graham's side than anything, is the increase in the direct cremations. Have we got any sort of facility to provide that sort of service? Knowing full well the Castle Eden site was going to open up and probably take the East Durham side, so it'll help protect ourselves with extra income. No.
Graham, can I invite you to come in on that one?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. We're still on with the electric regeneration work. Obviously, due to COVID, it's took a bit of a backlog, but we're still working on it. With regards to direct cremations, we currently offer this for 8:15, 8:30 drop-offs. Obviously, there's not a lot of uptake at the moment, but we are still seeing the throughput of them. We've had discussions also with the co-op funeral directors, because they currently take them to Kirkleatham.
Right.
So we've had discussions about trying to offer our services to them, and they're going to speak to their managers. So hopefully we may get a bit of increase through that.
Right. Thanks, Graham.
Yeah.
So the one thing I would sort of Councillor Blakey, I think the experience at Coundham was it was a bit of a, he said a slow burner. When the facility is opened, with it being a new facility, it takes quite a number of years for the setting to sort of, the planting and the landscaping and everything to mature. And what we experienced at Coundham was, and clearly cost will be an issue, Councillor Blakey, because these facilities to build from scratch from a private sector perspective and achieve the returns that they would, I would expect their cremation fee to be at or around or potentially north of the figures that Coundham charge. So there will be, there will be a price sensitivity issue there, and that sort of, I would expect that facility might be in the region of £150 more than what our cremation fee, and whether that is an influencing factor for residents in sort of families in the east of the county in terms of using that. But more of a significant factor with Coundon was that, when it was first opened, it did look a bit sparse, and it takes a while for the facility to sort of mature and then sort of build up its reputation. So it will be something that we would definitely need to keep an eye on, probably deeper into this medium-term financial planning period, because I think it'll take a while for that. I don't think it'll be immediately it's open and there'll be a big switch there. It will be sort of gradual if the county experience is anything to go by.
I think they also found there's an element of going to the place where your family's always gone, and there was an element that similar schools really go to where your family traditionally goes. Can I invite Councillor Ormerod in?
Thank you, Chairman. Just wanted to ask on the fees and charges on the regional comparison. Can I just ask why Redcar and Cleveland isn't there? Is that because they're purely private?
Graham, I don't know the answer if I'm honest, Councillor Ormerod. Those regional benchmarks are the ones that we've always reported through to the committee. I'm not sure if the one at Redcar and Cleveland's ever been reported, but we could try and include that from January if that would help.
Well, if I can come back there, Chair, I think it might, because I don't know for certain, but I think they are relatively expensive, so it might make us look even better in relation to the average. It just seems strange to do a regional comparison and leave one out. That was all.
Yeah, it's a good point.
We'll explore doing that in the future. Thanks to Councillor Ormerod. Can I bring in Councillor Joplin?
Thank you, Chair. Looking at the fees, mine's just a comment on fees. That I think we are running a very obviously tight ship and very, very successful. The over achievement is brilliant, which does go to prove that I do think that the £20 extra that's going on the charge is very modest. I wouldn't suggest that we go. When you look at the others, you could easily think we will charge a bit more, but I think our performance is probably due to the fact that we are so competitive, and in that sense, and with the economic climate which we are going to face in the next, well, however many years, due to this awful virus that we're all putting up with, I do think that being prudent is the best way forward, and I congratulate the way it was handled during the pandemic, and I hope that we don't get the same outcome in the next few months, but I'd like to think that we're ready and we're going to be able to cope with this as a service. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Joplin. Everybody happy with that? Well, can I say, unless there are any more questions, are we happy to accept that report? Okay, can I thank everybody for their attendance today? For our friends on social media, if you'd just like to stay online for the next few seconds. But again, thank you very much for your attendance, much appreciated. Can I take this opportunity, Graham, to ask you to pass on to all the staff that's involved, and indeed, Paul, all the staff at the rest of the County Council, for the help and support during this year. It's been a very difficult time for the people of County Durham and of Spennymoor, and I'm sure they appreciate the hard work that's been done. And we certainly appreciate the time and effort the staff have put in on our behalf. Thank you very much. Thank you. I'll now formally